time to work with all of you throughout this lockdown period for various webinars. I've learned a lot personally. I learned really a lot. Today, it's my real absolute pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Sanjay Sharma, whom I have known for more than 9 years, ever since I have started OncoStem Diagnostics. I've known Dr. Sharma. He's the director, professor, and surgeon of thoracic, breast, and upper GI cancer at the Asian Cancer Institute and Lilavati Hospital and Research Center. I have always enjoyed talking to him on various aspects of breast cancer, and his insights and discussions would have always helped me understand the entire process of breast cancer patient treatment management very well. I'm sure his presentation today will also be equally insightful, and the panel discussion we have today will be extremely helpful for all of us, and I'm sure we'll all learn from this discussion today. Along with Dr. Sharma, we have absolutely fantastic key opinion panel members who are all key opinion leaders from surgical, radiation, and medical oncology in India. And I would now hand over to, without any further ado, I would hand it over to Dr. Sharma to introduce each of the panelists, and let's get going with the panel discussion. Welcome you all for this webinar.
Thank you, Manjari, so much, and giving us this opportunity to have this platform for this program. I know we have had a lot of webinars, and breast cancer is one subject in which there is no end to discussion, and it always go on, until time immemorial. It has been there and will remain for long. I am really privileged to have this panel as the moderator, and I have my co-panelists are Dr. HVS Dev, who is the head department of oncology, especially in breast cancer. A lot of work, HVS Dev, and he has immense contribution in breast research and breast surgery at All India Institute. He is unparalleled to a lot of these sort of in this country, and tremendous amount of respect in the subject which he is so mastered upon. It's really welcome, Dr. Dev, and it's a pleasure to have you. The second is Dr. Vijayanand Reddy, very close friend, and one of the top radiation oncologists, the president of AORI in the past, tremendous interest in teaching, has exemplary skills in managing the patients with his art of radiation therapy, and immense academic interest in the field, starting with having sessions for all junior radiation oncologists. So I welcome Vijay and to be a participant in this. Third is my friend and very close colleague, Dr. Dherashil Samant, is basically a head and neck surgeon, has very good reconstructive training and has a lot of work on different kind of reconstruction, especially in breast. He does breast surgery too, and he's a good breast specialist. So to have him here is an honor, and he's actually a past president of Indian Society of Oncology, and he's currently a secretary of Indian Institute of Surgical Oncology. Welcome, Dr. Sawant. Dherashil, can you hear us? Where is he? Dherashil is muted? Oh. Anyway. Welcome, Dherashil. Next is, of course, Dr. Nitesh Rohde. He's the champion medical oncologist from New Delhi. Everybody knows him. And he has got immense, again, lot of insight, management of breast cancer, a lot of work on genetics of breast cancer. And more importantly, I was very intrigued by his metronomic work on breast and ovarian cancer. So hopefully, if we get a time, he will be able to chip in there for some kind of metronomic therapy in breast cancer. Of course, his knowledge about the subject and his interest in breast cancer is known to everybody. Welcome, Nitesh. Great to have you. Dr. Rochina Ahmed has yet not joined, so hopefully she joins. If not, I think Dherashil and the SVS Day will chip in. And maybe Dr. Deshpande is here. We can include him in the surgical realms of management of breast cancer. Am I audible now? Very well. Is it okay?
Yes, sir. You're audible, sir.
Okay. And then, last but not the least, my colleague, Dr. Nilesh Lokeshwar. Of course, He's a medical oncologist, trained initially at All India Institute, then worked in Tata, and then has joined as Asian Cancer Institute. Now he's a consultant in medical oncology at Lilavati Hospital, Mumbai. Pleasure to have you, Nilesh. Welcome. And my other friend, colleague, Dr. Kaustav Talpatra, is now the secretary of the AORI and one of the top persons in Mumbai for radiation oncology. He has a lot of work on all kinds of newer nuances in radiotherapy in Mumbai, and we are privileged to have you today, Kaustav. Thank you very much for joining, and I'm sure your inputs will be highly educative to the youngsters who have joined this thing. Thank you very much. Now, I think without ado, I think I will start with my first case. We will try to see if we can squeeze in 4 cases. Basically, the topic is LABC 360 degree. That means a locally advanced breast cancer, either operable or a borderline operability with different biologies. And why we do have to different treatments in different biologies, that I'm sure will be highlighted by my panelists and other participants in the meeting. So let's do with the first case. Can I have my slide, please?
Yes, sir.
35-year-old premenopausal lady with left breast mass since 15 days. No other medical history. And next slide. Left mass with upper quarter quadrant, 12 o'clock position, 2.8 into 2.5 centimeter. Skin is free. And underlying muscle 3 centimeter away from nipple areola complex. The left axilla had a 1.5 into 1.5 centimeter clinical node. The right breast was normal, no other clinical findings. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, Dr. Dev, I've listed some amount of investigations here. In an institution of yours as big as that, in a general institution, how many of these investigations that you need to do or you follow at your institution? Be it mammogram, true gut biopsy, bone scan, chest X-ray, PET scan, and I've not mentioned here of MRI. How often in a young lady as this, you need to do certain investigation presently in this scenario that patient has?
Dr. Sanjay, we are dealing here with a young breast cancer. She's 35. So for the diagnostic workup, the standard of care, we use mammogram and a combination. If there is any local issues with these two, a dense breast, because we are expecting a dense breast sometimes at this age group, or indeterminate mammograms, then only we go for MRI. We don't routinely do MRI as a first line in these patients. If there's an issue with mammography or sonography, then only we go for it. Of course, TrueCut is standard of care at our institution. We all recommend to go for a TrueCut biopsy because of the advantages of getting a tissue diagnosis. And we can also do the IHC for ER, PR, and HER. If you're all stage 1 and 2s, we don't do a routine metastatic workup, except few exceptions in aggressive biologies like TNBC, HER positive, node positive, we sometimes do metastatic workup. That includes a bone scan and a CT chest, abdomen, and pelvis.
But this lady, in this lady is a tumor of just about 2.8 centimeter, moderate size of breast with almost 1.5 large lymph node.
Yes.
Before a biology is available to us.
Yes.
Don't you advocate a PET scan in this scenario as there is a likelihood of a regional lymph node positivity?
We do go for a metastatic workup in the subset, even though she is T2 and 1, but we do metastatic workup in young breast cancer node positive. So we have
fair enough. Next slide.
Yes.
Here I'll ask Dr. Vijayanand Reddy, do you have in your setup, obviously yours are a private setup, do we change our investigation modalities in the scenario like this, as what Dr. Dev mentioned in his that he has, and is there any difference in the institution that you work?
Right. So there are two issues here. As he rightly said, if it's in a corporate hospital and normally in a young lady, if you leave it to us, then normally we do a metastatic workup with a single whole body PET CT scan. But as per the guidelines are concerned, PET scan is not mandatory, not really necessary. You need to do a chest X-ray, ultrasound, and serum alkaline phosphatase. Even the bone scan is debatable. Chest X-ray, ultrasound with surgical profile, that should be enough.
Okay. So, of course, I'm sorry I couldn't find the mammogram of this lady. Probably she took it home, but had a dense breast, not very dense breast, but an upper quadrant lump, mass infiltrating into surrounding breast, but not into underlying muscles. The node was 1.5 to 1 centimeter. Right breast was normal. Next slide, please. Core biopsy showed invasive ductal CA grade 3, ER, PR negative, KI 6780, and AR 40%. Now, we do routinely do AR. We are doing a lot of studies on AR, so I don't want to discuss it all, but I would definitely appreciate at the end whether this has relevance in management of breast cancer. Maybe after all the three kinds of tumors are discussed, we'll discuss that part. Next slide, please. So as we have also a routine that if a young patient who has a nodal disease, we normally do a PET scan. For the simple reason, if it is a biology triple negative as mentioned here, we found that there was a 3 into 2.8 centimeter lesion with SUV of 12.7. The axillary node was big, about 1.8 to 1.5. It's surprising, not surprisingly, left internal memory node was a 5 mm node, but there was an SU value of 5. So there was no other node positive anywhere else, and there was no other metastasis. So again, question to maybe Nitesh or Kastav. Would you treat this patient as a locally advanced cancer, or you still believe that that mediastinal node is can be ignored, and you can treat that patient primarily as a T2 and T disease? You can take this question. Yeah.
May I speak? Is that Nilesh or Nitesh?
No, it is Nitesh at first. How do you treat the patient? 1 minute.
I personally,
but you treat it as T2 and 2, or you take it as an N3B?
so I think at the moment it is indicating towards N1 and not, but I think I would like to watch that internal memory node. Now, one thing is that the size is very small and comparative SUV is there. If I can sample, but I guess I can't at 5 mm, I would have ideally like to sample it. Otherwise, I would err on the side of a lower stage and watch it carefully, because we'll have to see what we do with that, if it disappears or if it doesn't disappear, and so on.
Dr. Dev, will you treat it as N2B or N3B rather? Sorry, N3B.
Yeah. The
N3B.
mediastinal is different. We'll take it as NTB because mediastinal nodes are different. Internal memory is different. Most of the time, we see reactive lymph nodes in the mediastinal, but internal memory is unusual. Even though size is normal, I will keep it as a positive node in the internal memory. But we keep a watch on it.
Okay. Anyway, this patient was, for us, we believe that since it was a triple negative case, we should, try to manage this case. Now, next slide, please. So, how do we manage this case? Can I involve Dr. Nilesh Lokeshwar here? Nilesh is a negative case with so-called borderline locally advanced cancer, maybe N2 disease, maybe just about N1 disease, N1B. How do you manage these patients if it comes to you straight away? Would you ask to straight away operate upon, or do you want to do something different?
So, well, in the setting that it is a triple negative breast cancer, I feel that this patient is a candidate for neoadjuvant therapy. In fact, I'd like to say that probably apart from a T1, any nodal disease in a triple negative scenario is a patient who is probably a candidate for neoadjuvant therapy. So I have some slides that I would like to discuss detailing on what the different types of neoadjuvant therapy can be used. And can I just request?
Yeah, go ahead. Please go ahead. But be short. We are running time. Too many cases to discuss. Yeah, Nilesh.
Yeah. So essentially, what is important to understand is what we define as pathological CR. And note must be made that there is a difference between the breast pathological CR and a total pathological CR, which includes complete absence of disease in the nodes also. Next slide, please. And we know that those patients who have a pathological complete response, there's a very strong correlation between the event-free survival and overall survival. And those patients who have a pathological CR tend to do well. What we don't know yet is what exactly is the delta, or how much of patients, is it every patient who's got a path CR who's going to do very well? I think that question is still not very clear. Can I have the next slide, please? A lot of this also has to do because of the fact that there is a significant difference in the biology of TNBCs. While most TNBCs are basal types and most basal types are TNBCs, that is not true for all patients. And as you can see in this graph, there are several other patients who also are and HER2 enriched, as well as a luminal A and a luminal B type. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Kashish, can I have the next slide, please? Sorry, the one before. Yeah. So these are some of the initial studies where carboplatin, we know that carboplatin has been used extensively in metastatic TNBC. These were 4 studies which were used in the neoadjuvant setting. And while there was a significant improvement in the pathological CRs, this initial data has not translated conclusively across all the different studies into an OS and a DFS advantage. And we really don't know the reason for that. A lot of it has got to do with the disease biology. And of course, with the new advent of the PARP inhibitors, it was important to compare the PARP inhibitors along with taxanes and a platinum in this setting. And can I go to the next slide, please? So we have this study where in unselected patients, veliparib was combined along with paclitaxel versus paclitaxel versus pacli alone. And as you can see, only paclitaxel was an inferior arm, indicating that both veliparib, which is a PARP inhibitor, as well as the taxane and the carboplatin, both of these are playing an important role in triple-negative breast cancer. Can I go to the next slide, please? So this brings us to an important point, that is the BRCAness in the triple-negative breast cancer. And this includes both patients who have a BRCA1 or a BRCA2 mutation, as well as a somatic HRD mutation. And in this small study, which is the JEPAROLA study, in about 102 patients who had an HRD, these patients were randomized to use paclitaxel, olaparib versus pacli and carboplatin. Next slide, please. And as you can see, both the arms did well, but the platinum arm did better in those patients who were triple negative. Next slide, please. This is the TBCRC study, which in all comers, that is patients without any BRCA mutations, were randomized to receive cisplatin versus paclitaxel in the neoadjuvant setting. Next slide, please. And as you can see, there was not a very significant difference in the overall rate of complete responders. But if you go to divide them between the HRD positive and the HRD negative, next slide, please. Cisplatin did better in those patients who are HRD positive as compared to the paclitaxel. Next slide, please. So this is just to basically summarize the fact that there are 3 very important agents. You have the taxanes, you have the platinums, and you have the PARP inhibitors. What we know as of today is that the use of PARP inhibitors and platinums is probably important in those patients who have BRCA mutations or those who have HRD positivity.
Thank you, Nilesh. Very nicely said. Now, since Roshina is not there, Dharishil, in this scenario, would you give chemotherapy or operate upfront as a surgeon? Dharishil muted and unmuted?
Sir, you'll have to. Give unmute yourself. Yeah. There you go.
Dharishil, can you tell me whether in your scenario, this patient, I'll talk to you, Dr. Dev, I'll come back to you. Would you like to operate this patient upfront, or would you operate, send it to Nilesh or medical oncologist
first, and then look at the patient.
Okay, fine. Dr. Dev. Dr. Dev, how come Dev is mutated? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Dev.
Before we go for treatment decision, I think this patient merits a genetic counseling because she is young, she is TNBC. So I think she needs to be counseled first for family history and genetic testing. Then I think before going for treatment decision, that's what I think is the correct. Yes.
that was my actually question. How often we do genetic testing in our group of patients with such scenarios? Any idea? Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in AIMS, we have been doing for these kind of patients, especially young TNBCs, a strong family history, first or second degree relatives. We have been counseling them and getting testing done for these patients. So we do it routinely.
Yeah, but in this patient, there is no family history except she is young, 38, 35-year-old. I would not do it unless and until, as Dr. Nilesh Lokeshwar said, that there are other factors seen in the biopsy and done that. But yes, I would definitely like.
Yeah, but young TNBC is an indication. Young TNBC is an indication. Even if there is no family history, it is an indication for genetist.
Yeah, but this patient, we did it and was not BRCA negative.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Dr. Nitesh, any other thing that you want to add in this patient? What kind of therapy?
I actually agree with Dr. Dio that in these patients, that testing is must. It also will give you time when you're giving neoadjuvant therapy. Another reason to give them neoadjuvant, because they may be ideal for mastectomy and further management. So I do feel that young patients, TNBC node positive, as Nilesh said, should be upfront chemotherapy and genetic counseling ASAP.
Okay, so
otherwise I'll leave it.
It is BRCA negative. So what kind of chemotherapy that you will start with?
It should be a panel discussion, so they are unmuting. They just unmuted me. I just wanted to say.
No, excuse me, Kashish, please.
Yes, sir, I've unmuted everybody.
Any panelist, please.
Sure, sir. 100%.
Right. Regarding the first patient, I agree with Nilesh, and I want to stress on Dr. Dio's paper. If you remember, Dr. Dio, he didn't mention about it. So that's a wonderful paper that comparing neoadjuvant versus adjuvant chemotherapy for breast cancer.
Absolutely.
It's an analysis published by you.
Yes, sir.
That's a wonderful paper that we need to bring that here. And there was another paper where they have 10 international randomized trials, meta-analysis, which actually correlates with your paper.
Sir.
Whether you do neoadjuvant or adjuvant chemotherapy, one thing we should remember that there is no difference in survival.
Survivals.
Absolutely no difference in survival. Now, what Nilesh mentioned about the pathological complete responses, yes, they do well compared to other people who don't get pathological. But if you compare overall group of people who go for neoadjuvant versus adjuvant chemotherapy, there is no difference in overall survival. So in fact, local recurrences were higher in the neoadjuvant chemotherapy group. So only in a molecular status where you think that triple negative patients, and in the patient which Sanjay has presented, that's probably metastatic in IMC or a doubtful borderline operable cases, then you look at neoadjuvant chemotherapy. So that we should understand that neoadjuvant therapy is not going to improve the survival. If it is operable upfront, with a zero negative margins, it has to be taken up for surgery. And then based on that, we can look at what need to be done as an adjuvant treatment.
Thank you, Vinay. Nitesh, what chemotherapy? Don't unmute any of my panelists, please. Don't.
So can I? Yeah, this is very difficult. So can I first interject about Dr. Anand's comment? And while I accept what he said, that so far the
make it short, yeah.
Okay, so the point is that in the era of escalation and not escalation in this group, I think time will show, but we need to readdress that question. My personal preference in this case would be to start with AC followed by PACLI at least, and I would like to do a weekly carbo if I can.
Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. So we give EC4. Now, will you give weekly PACLI or you give 3 weekly PACLI? Nitesh, Nilesh, anybody?
Sir, in this patient, I agree with the points that Dr. Reddy just mentioned. Why I particularly believe that NACD should be considered in this, because like Nitesh mentioned, there are post-therapy escalation possibilities that can be done in this patient. And we would prefer to use either a dose dense or in a neoadjuvant setting an AZ followed by weekly paclitaxel.
Yeah, so that would be the best. The dose dense has to be thought of in a young lady like that. So dose dense AC followed by weekly paclitaxel is a standard.
Fair enough.
Dr. Sanjay.
Now, yeah, 1 minute, Dr. Dev, I'll come back. Just one last question to my medical oncologist, Nilesh. Role of immunotherapy in a neoadjuvant setting. I believe there was an article last year, came back sometime in July from, I think, Marsden, or, I don't know. I think it was the checkpoint inhibitor, I think 362 or 632, something like that. It did mention that including immunotherapy to the chemotherapy increases the complete response rate to 69 point some percent. Is that true? And is that article true? And do you follow that?
So there were two trials essentially. One is the Keynote 522 trial, which has compared pembrolizumab with Pacli AC versus Pacli AC alone. And the second trial compared atezolizumab with Pacli Carbo versus Pacli Carbo alone. And both of them in the neoadjuvant setting have shown a higher rates of pathological CR. Two things to remember: we don't have long-term data about this, number one. And the second important thing, that these were unselected patients. And that is important because the DFS benefit in the metastatic setting has been seen only in patients who are selected with a TPS score based on the 142 analysis.
Yes, sir. I think we need to.
Last word for Dr. Dev, and I won't go ahead further. We're running short of time.
Yes.
Slide of my side. Next slide. Ashish, next slide. Okay, so this patient received the NSGT at 50% response. Tumor size came down to 1.8, node regressed to 0.75. I'm sorry again, no mammogram. But Dr. Dey and Dr. Derashil Sawant, what did you do in this patient with some node regressed to that size? The PET scan revealed that these tumors were there and the node in the mediastinum disappeared. So what do you do in this patient? She's a young lady who would like to do what kind of surgery if you propose so?
Dr.
Derashil first.
Yes.
Let Dr. Dev finish.
Okay, Dr. Dev first. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Sanjay, in these patients, we normally, as per protocol, we take for neoadjuvant chemotherapy, we do place a metal marker in the tumor. So if you're contemplating,
we do the same. So it's a good point. Yes.
Because sometimes they achieve a very good CR rate, miss the tumor. So that is one. And we are taking here as positive, clinically positive. So she has shown a good response, and if she is keen, the decision for BCS has to be taken before we start chemotherapy. If the patient is keen, then I will definitely consider breast conservation therapy in this patient.
Obviously, this lady was very keen. Derashil, would you be able to, say, for example, as I said, moderate blood, it's a B cup size breast. What kind of primary closure you do? It's not a very, so you remove about 4 centimeter lump or 3 centimeter lump with 1.5 centimeter margin on one side, 0.8 margin on the other side. Would you be able to close primarily in this patient, or you rotate some?
So you can close, you can close anything primarily.
No, I'm talking giving an equal good cost message to the patient.
So one must plan in all these patients a good oncoplasty. What will be oncoplasty? Can I have my slides, please, Kashish? Kashish?
There is sound slide, Kashish. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, go back one slide, please. Go back one slide. So you got looking at 3 types of breast reconstruction. One is oncoplastic surgery, of which I'll talk now. Reconstructive surgery after BCT will be for some other cases, and breast reconstruction after mastectomy. Next, please. So oncoplastic surgery would be like something like a volume reduction, like in this young lady, which she had actually sarcoma. Still okay. This was volume reduction, oncoplasty. Next, a round block oncoplasty. Now, this is something which can be offered to a young lady, and you can see that the margins are fairly clear, and you can do, especially if it's something in the medial, upper medial cortex. Otherwise, a scar or any other thing will be more visible. So this is what she is at the end of after 4 weeks, and then she's going to go in for radiation. So this is a round block oncoplasty, which I use a lot nowadays. You open up this area, open this, raise a flap like a breast, and then go down and excise the tumor. Then this whole thing can be closed up like this. So this is something which we should be definitely looking at for nearly every patient. I don't think in today's time we should be offering just a primary closure and not bother how the breast is going to look. When we do a BCT or when you do small excisions, which is also very, very important, I feel, that the resultant defect should look acceptable to the patient and not only just to the surgeon.
Thank you, Darishir. I think for want of time, we'll skip over. Next slide, please. My slides. My slide. My slide. Kashish, my slide.
Yes, sir. I'm sharing your slides.
Sorry. Okay, so go further. Go back. Just 2 slides. Go on. So any what? Of course, we operated. No, go back. Go back. So we operated that. Go back 1 more slide. Okay, so this was the final report. 4 centimeter into 3 centimeter. The T was 2 centimeter. 2 out of 11 node with PNI. Next slide. Any further chemotherapy?
The capecitabine, create X.
One word.
Create X.
Hello?
Capecitabine, sir. Create X.
Okay. Nitesh, what do you have to do in this case?
So create X, sir.
Perfect. For how long?
Capecitabine.
So 6 months.
6 months. And no other chemotherapy along with it. Single agent is fine. Okay?
Yes, sir.
So I come to Kaustav. Patient who had surgery done with axillary clearance was done. Because there was a large node there, we did not respond completely. So what would be your radiotherapy plan after a good surgery done by Dr. Dev and Dr. Sawant? Dr. Talpatra, please. Because we are worried about the nodal basin radiotherapy and complications like post-radiotherapy edema and lymphedema. So how can you help surgeons? Of course, surgeons may not help himself. There is a lot of nodal disease, but
so here, rest of it is pretty clear in terms of radiation. Only thing, so it has to be radiation to the breast. This particular oncoplasty would not change my radiation portals except for the flap that if he has done a rotation, the boost should go to the original site and not to the rotated site. In terms of elective nodal radiation, since axillary dissection has been done, I will not touch axilla with radiation, but supraclavicular, currently with 2 nodes, 1 to 3 nodes positive in this setting, supraclavicular nodal radiation is the standard guideline. The question remains is whether we should do a wide tangent or some other technique to include the ipsilateral internal mammary node, which was present upfront on the PET CT and whose SUV was 4.2. Very difficult decision, but based on all the 3 randomized trials which have come, your MA20, and the FEN study and the EORTC study, I would be probably inclined to, if I'm not jeopardizing my heart and lung doses much, I would probably be inclined at least to ipsilaterally include the left internal mammary node, which was present up front with a 0.2 SUV.
Dr. Vijayanand Reddy, I wanted to...
I fully agree with what Kaustav has mentioned, but I also thought that he would ask another question. In case if this patient had a complete disappearance of the lymph node.
That we will come for the next case. I have a case for you for that.
Okay, so
we will come back to that. Next slide, please. So I think this first case clearly summarizes in triple negative case that what happens. If we have time, we have a BRCA positive patient to discuss now. We'll quickly, 54-year-old female, 5 centimeter tumor, 1 centimeter axillary node, clinically positive, 6 months history. And next slide. So you can see that lady with a mild edema, retraction of nipple and a node there. Next slide. Next slide. That's opposite breast. You can see quite a lot of edema, definitely locally advanced cancer. Next slide. Obviously, routine investigation in this case, everybody will agree that we'll do a scan. Next slide. And mammogram shows 5 points this tumor. There's an axillary node. Next slide. PET scan was done. Go back. PET scan was done. All the nodes were very high. As you very know, the metastasis. Next slide. That's the mammogram. You can see the right breast on the top superior quadrant. There's a large tumor around that area, about 5 centimeters. Next slide. And that's the biopsy. ER positive, PR 1%, HER2 3 plus. How many of you just do fish in all with 3 plus?
So not required.
I don't do it. And Nitesh, Nilesh.
Not required, sir. Not required.
Nitesh,
As long as you know the lab is good, not required. Sir.
Not required at all. I agree.
Okay, perfect. We did a FNAC of a right node just to confirm that there is a metastasis. Next slide. And that's a PET scan. You can see the large tumor. Next slide. And that's a nodal disease. You can see here with node, big node around there. Next slide. So this patient obviously would need upfront chemotherapy. Nitesh, your baby, what kind of chemotherapy you will give in this patient?
Sir, she was cardiac status was good, and how old was she?
She's absolutely all right. His ejection fraction was 66%.
Sir, you could either do AC THP if cost is not a concern, or TCHP if cost is not a concern. Otherwise, AC THP.
What's the difference between the two?
Sir, in my mind, the fact that the PR is low, Ki is somewhere in between high, the fact that the node is very big, it is LABC, I do want to include anthracyclines. And I think that's my personal choice. I've just become...
So you give EC and
followed by TCH.
But why not straight away? There is enough data available now that upfront TCH...
and that would be absolutely fine. Absolutely right. That would be absolutely right. I think starting with taxane, pertuzumab, Herceptin, and platinum would be an excellent choice here too.
So here you like to have use a dual HER2 blocker?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, in a neoadjuvant setting?
Yes, sir.
Do you have some data to suggest that there is a beneficial aspect in this, involved in this?
So certainly for pathological
Easy to use
CR.
dual blockers. Patients are poor. They don't use. They don't have money for that.
So if cost,
we have some slide or something to show in that, or you can mention that.
If cost is a concern, then questions change. If cost is a concern, then Herceptin and taxane are very good option, and in fact anthracycline adds more, because then you can do 4 TNH and hope that there's a pathological CR rather than do 6 Herceptin. And so you have to first tell me whether the patient is well affording or not. Only then you can make those decisions.
Obviously, this patient cannot afford pertuzumab at the moment in India.
Then I would
can afford biosimilars. So, you know, our biosimilars are really good enough. If I'm not wrong,
I feel
can be subject to question by you all.
I would do 4 AC followed by 4 taxane and Herceptin with a biosimilar, and be very comfortable doing that.
Dr. Dev, any role for straight surgery in this patient?
No, I'll go for neoadjuvant because she's luminal B, she's ERPR positive, she's HER positive with a moderate proliferative index. I think she's a good candidate for neoadjuvant followed by positive. If it's a pure luminal, sometimes we may consider.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, Dr.
Anything that you want to add to what Nitesh has said?
No, I think I completely agree with him.
Fair enough. So, next slide, please. She received 12 technique plus Herceptin, response good, no lump, mild edema, breast persistent, no node, PET scan, no mets. Even the primary disappeared. Next slide. You can see the mammogram shows that bump which was seen on the right breast is totally gone. Though there was little fibrosis on the sonography, but 2 into 1 centimeter. Now, in this scenario, they put an MRI help. Because it's a dense, not very dense, but the tumor, our breast itself was dense, but the other part, she was a fatty lady. So will it help to demarcate how much is the response, or you will only judge by PET scan only?
No, preoperatively, I think before chemotherapy, you have to be very clear if you want to go for an MRI or not. If I remember the pre-chemotherapy, she has a relatively dense breast because the borders are not well defined. If you see the tumor.
Here you can see that.
Yeah.
Tumor has regressed.
Yes, tumor has regressed now. So these patients, we do, if the plan is there, if you're considering breast conservation following neoadjuvant chemotherapy, we definitely marker and go back for breast conservation surgery, even in the CR.
Fair enough. In this case, we did put a marker there, and we proceed all in most of the cases in this. All right, next slide, please.
Dr. Sanjay, if you look at again the paper published by Dr. Dio.
Yeah, I read that paper.
So in that case, local recurrence chances are very high. So be careful. In your patient, the patient was more than 5 centimeters. There was a skin thickening. So I would suggest to go for a MRM rather than a breast conservative surgery, which will have high chance of local recurrence.
Yeah, but okay, let me complete that. So okay, now in this case, surgery is to be done. Dr. Dev, you first, and then Dherashil, and even my friend Dr. Deshpande is sitting there. He can also chip in whether they would like to conserve this patient, because she was insistent that if there's no tumor there in PET scan, why can't you save my breast? I have a big size breast. Dr. Dev.
Yeah. So you see, our policy is for the LABC, we do offer breast conservation, but especially as Dr. Reddy has said, if there is T4B patients, a good amount of skin edema, normally we don't encourage too much of breast conservation unless patient is very keen, and if they achieve a CR, then we consider it. Most of the LABCs who go for breast conservation after NSCT or T3 based LABCs. T4B, we have to be a little careful when you offer breast conservation. It is not absolute contraindication, but you can do it.
Next slide. So this option of is MRM, BCT with reconstruction, you excise the maybe quadrant completely with the part of the skin around that areas, because she was keen to save the breast. Next slide, please. So we did in this patient conservative. Now, of course, this patient had an axillary node. Now there is a lot of write-up about a post-chemotherapy near CR tumors to have a sentinel node biopsy. Dr. Dev, are we performing that? Though I do in our cases, maybe in this case we did the biopsy for the same reason, but we only do sentinel node biopsy where dual techniques are available. So what kind of sentinel node biopsy or which kind of patient that you will choose? Maybe this case may not be the right case, but if given a chance, she has total CR, I said in PET scan, no tumor seen. Will you try that?
Yeah, adjuvant chemotherapy, SLNB, there is adequate literature to support the approach of sentinel node biopsy following neoadjuvant chemotherapy. But you have to be careful. It's always recommended to do a dual technique. We use a combination of blue dye as well as radioisotope. And the minimum you should try to harvest 2 to 3 nodes. Your false negatives will go down, especially after neoadjuvant chemotherapy. So this is a potential candidate. If you have a dual technique available with you, if you have a good experience, yes, we can go for sentinel lymph node biopsy.
My next slide, please. As you said, this Z071 Alliance trial did show that the negative rate, if it has to be less than 9%, you need to have, as you rightly said, dual technique. Then 3 nodes to be removed.
Yes.
And, so they have to be little, so bring this. Next slide. Same thing with Sentinel trial. Sentinel trial, the same thing. Next slide, please. It says the conclusion, the same thing, that you have to have a false negative rate below 9% to have dual technique and more than 3 nodes to be sampled. Next slide. And of late, since we people are now putting a marker to the axillary node,
yes,
that particular node on the sonography, and if those 1 or 2 nodes around is negative, there are a lot of trials. One Italian trial which is published shows that dual markup and markup pickup, you can bring in the false negative rate to almost 2 to 4%. Do we agree to that? Because this is a trial, and now I'm sure you have also done that marker node biopsy study. So any result from your side of them?
We do, as a part of a research project, we started putting metal markers in the lymph nodes. So that will basically increase the accuracy of identifying the right node after chemotherapy.
Okay, next slide, please. Next slide. What kind of reconstruction we will do in this patient? I removed a big, huge quadrant of the lung. The margins, slide. Can I have my next slide, please? So we did an underwent right LD flap. I just wanted to correct the that did I do a right thing by doing this? Because this patient, we did a lower axillary clearance. We did excise the right breast lump with the part of the skin around that area. At frozen section, the margins were totally negative. Next slide. And you can see here, 4 centimeter, which was fibrous tumor, no residual tumor. All nodes, with 4 nodes removed, and is the YPT0, N0, M0. TR is 0. So there is still, you think this LD flap is a good idea, or you like to do something else if this lady has a big breast available?
Yeah, can I have my slides, please, Kashi?
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now, go back.
Is this the correct one?
So, yes, yes. Okay. So now, one thing you can do is just an oncoplasty here, just volume rotation or volume displacement oncoplasty. It is a large breast and the whole thing has been responded. That is something which you can do, but one has to be very clear in mobilizing these two pillars. And once you mobilize these two pillars, especially in a lax breast, I am not talking about the patient which Sanjay said, but this is something which is possible. Next slide, please. Or the other one is, this is something one of Dr. Deshpande's patient itself we did just a few days back. And this is what her pre-op was. She had neoadjuvant chemotherapy, and I put an LD flap for her. So if you see the pre-op and the post-op nearly match, obviously this is, she's just, I think 5 days post-op or 4 days post-op. So an LD flap, because especially for these patients, we're going to give radiotherapy since this was a LABC, an LD flap really works well. This is another girl where we had put in an LD flap here. This augments the indications for doing a BCT. As I said, as Dr. Vijayanand Reddy said, not all patients would be offering BCT, but certain select group of patients you would be offering BCT. And if you do, and you find that the breast volume to the tumor excision is not matched properly, one should put in a filler LD. Either you can put an LD as a regular thing or use a LICAP flap. These two flaps are very easy to come in just from the sides, and they can be very, very easily put. Thank you.
Would you put like, since if you rotate a flap, you put markers as Dr. Vijayanand Reddy wanted to, or even Kaustubh wanted to?
Yes, obviously.
They can give a boost to the area.
So the markers are put before we shift the flap in, and then go ahead with the stuff. So
next slide, please. Okay, give my slide, please.
Sure, sir.
Okay, so of course, Nitesh, you have to show some slide about the trastuzumab and the newer trial.
So it's okay. So it's okay. We're running short. We'll discuss that.
Yeah, but suppose this patient has had remaining tumor. What would
so I think the bigger question is she didn't have remaining tumor, as she didn't, sir. What I'll do is I'll just, if we can share screen, I'll show why it is important that if the cost is a concern, we must use anthracycline. Can I share screen, Kashish?
Yeah, show the slide. Yeah.
So,
go ahead. Nitesh, go ahead.
Okay, so essentially this is showing that we know HERA 11 years 70%. Can we go forward? Next. Can we go next? Okay, so this we already saw that there was a significant benefit of pathological CR. Can we go ahead? And this is still sitting at 70%. I think what I'm trying to show here is that despite of everything, what we see is that an adjuvant therapy or patients who are not getting pathological CR are sitting at 70%. So the only way to go up beyond 80-85 is a pathological CR. Can we go to the next slide? This is conjectural. This is not data. So please feel free to comment on this.
Aren't you doing this if there is a residual tumor at this stage, Nitesh?
So what I was trying to say is the residue, if you go backwards, go back. So in this, basically the pathological CR who didn't receive was sitting at 70%, which is sitting similar to your HERA trial of 70% adjuvant study. So what I'm trying to show is that we have a similar cross trial, all of that is agreed, but we have a similar number of survival at 10 years of patients who are either given adjuvant therapy or who are not getting pathological CR. But now I'll show you what happens when you do escalation of care. Let's go to the next slide. So if you go to escalation of care, you see if you give TDM1 at 3 years, this is very little, very early data, but we have 11% difference. Next slide. And you have a hazard ratio of 0.5 there. Next slide. Next slide. And next slide. Sorry, I think there. Again, if you see the CreateX and you see escalation of care in the adjuvant setting, you have a hazard ratio of 0.5. And again, you're crossing 0.8 in the survival data at 3 years. Can you go to the next slide? So just a very quick, this is difficult, rough calculation, 40 to 60%, average 50% have residual disease HER2. Next slide. And again, 50% have residual disease in TNBC. And if you have 150,000 new cases, 60% EBCs, and 50% are HER2 and TNBC put together. So I'm not saying either. We know that's about 20-25% put together, 30,000 patients. And let's say half can't afford TDM1 or toxicity of capecitabine. So we still have 15,000 patients who potentially can be escalated in their care. Next slide. And this is a rough, very rough calculation. If you start with 400, and if you calculate forward based on the statistics that are available, previous slide, next slide, you can, and apply that to 15,000, next slide, you can actually say 1,400 lives just by changing sequence. Now, I know we'll have to wait for data of a study to come back, but the data may show that we will have survival advantage if we escalate care. And in fact, based on that, NICE recently did a calculation similar to this and have incorporated neoadjuvant therapy or emphasis on neoadjuvant therapy based on escalation of care, not based on the survival advantage from PV data. And I do agree Dr. Dio's paper is one of the most important papers that one needs to read about, because that's what made us not all go gung-ho over neoadjuvant therapies. I think that's a very important paper which contradicts this. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitesh. Next slide, please. We have very little time for the next question, next case. I'll quickly run through that. Then we have to take question answers. Next, go further. Case 3. Short postmenopausal lady, history of lump. She noticed 3 months, but the husband said it's for more than 1 year. Next slide, hypothyroid, hypertensive, mass 4 into 4 centimeter with 1 cent away from 1 centimeter from areola. 1 minute. Yeah. Node, big node. Next slide, please. Next, that's mass here. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. ERPR, almost 100% positive, HER2 negative. 67, KI 67 as low as 6. AR is 90%. Next slide. So, PET scan showed localized disease, no meds. Next slide. Go back. Now, Nilesh, with a strong ERPR with very low KI 67. Is there a role for chemotherapy?
I'm sorry, I didn't get your question, sir.
I said with such a, she's a locally advanced disease, large node, large tumor. Not that you can't do a mastectomy, you can by pulling that or rotating some flap. But would you like to treat this patient with chemotherapy at all with such a low KI 67?
So, what we have realized is that probably one group of patients where the chemotherapy doesn't work very good in the neoadjuvant setting is those patients who are strong ERPR positive. However, at the moment that continues to remain the standard of care because we really don't have too many proven options. There are several other options that have been attempted. For example, the use of single agent aromatase inhibitors for about 4 to 6 months preoperative. And there are current clinical trials going on where they're using the CDK4 inhibitors along with an AI in the neoadjuvant setting, where they have shown that the efficacy of using a CDK4 inhibitor along with an AI is as good as chemotherapy with much lesser toxicity. But these are initial studies, especially the Colorine trial, and I don't think we have any data yet on DFS or on OS. So to recommend that as a standard of care is not correct. Having said that, in this patient who has received reasonably adequate chemotherapy and had not had a good clinical response, we have two options. One option is either go ahead for a MRN with a flap, versus consider a second line neoadjuvant, maybe hormone therapy, considering that she is strong ER/PR positive. But given the,
I think let Dr. Dev respond. Yes, Dr. Dev.
Dr. Sanjay, I think in this patient, the benefit with chemotherapy are very, very minimal. Patient.
So would you give this patient chemotherapy at all?
No. In our center, in these kind of patients, the threshold for chemotherapy is going down slowly. We are going either for upfront surgery or neoadjuvant hormonal therapy. Her Ki-67 is also very, very low.
Okay. So
the neoadjuvant trials,
how long will you give the? Vijay, one sec. How long would you like to give a neoadjuvant hormone therapy? Because it will take at least about 1 or 2 years for the tumor to come down.
Yeah, absolutely. A minimum of 6 months. A minimum of 6 months if you want to downstage, if she's keen for breast conservation. Otherwise, we go for upfront surgery, then put them on adjuvant therapies. If
Vijay,
you start, yeah.
Vijay, you are saying something.
And all the neoadjuvant chemotherapy trials, randomized trials have clearly shown, all the retrospective data clearly shown HER2 negative and ER/PR positive and low Ki index patients do not respond to neoadjuvant chemotherapy. I agree with Dr. Dev. Neoadjuvant hormonal therapy, slow but steady response would be there. With the matted lymph nodes, I would go for neoadjuvant hormonal therapy followed by surgery.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so she was given Pegticarbo and that's why she didn't respond. So next slide. Next slide. Next slide, please. We did the mastectomy and you can see the Ki-6710, but she had 3 node positive. In this scenario, what kind of radiation that you give to the lady who has 3 nodes positive? You have done a good dissection. What kind of radiation therapy? And because patient doesn't want to take a longer therapy. So nowadays you have a lot of de-escalation in radiation therapy. Do you think that she will be attached to the left side tumor that she has? Person hypertensive and hypothyroid. Any difference in radiotherapy that normally you would give on earlier and now you do it? After a mastectomy and with this histology.
You're asking me or Kaustav?
Yeah, I'm asking you, yes.
Right. So this is a locally advanced malignancy. Unfortunately, we have to go for a chest wall plus perigranular areas like axilla, supraclavicular areas. So all these hypofractionated schedules mostly are in when you're treating only the breast conservation, post breast conservation, or when you're treating only the chest wall. Maximum that you can do is 3 weeks, not shorter than that. The FAST trial is mainly, they have completely excluded patients who need radiation to the axilla and supraclavicular or IMC.
But will this candidate fit into FAST trial?
Candidates of BCS and patients do not require, chest wall also is included, but they should not include the axillary radiation or supraclavicular IMC radiation. Only chest wall and BCS. So it almost comes to early breast cancer with no nodal involvement when there is no indication for axillary radiation.
Also, in scenario like that with so much of axillary burden, the surgeon has done a good dissection. Now, how do you prevent with modern radiation techniques that we have, Dr. Talpatra, that you can avoid the
so here I agree with Dr. Vijayanand.
Or the apical area where the edema is the main cause of concern in this group of patients.
So in this setting, in this age group, probably we can avoid the axillary radiation part of it, although it's part of node dissection. So my treatment portals would be chest wall radiation and the supraclavicular radiation. With a word of caution, which Dr. Vijayanand has rightly pointed out, the axillary node dissection is 8. It is, but considering the overall setting, I would stick to chest wall and supraclavicular nodal radiation, and probably looking at the morbidity, age, avoid radiation to axilla.
Dr. Dev, one question to you before I close up this case. Would you like to do a molecular markers in this patient vis-a-vis in terms of oncotype TX to see whether it falls into the category before you start giving chemotherapy or hormone therapy? Dr. Dev?
Yes, absolutely. Especially we do it in the adjuvant setting. Only issue is because most of the data is with node negative luminal patients, Oncotype DX. Even though the data is available for node positive, but we have been doing Oncotype DX for patients where they are node negative and luminal post surgery. They benefit with chemotherapy or not.
Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So the patient received 55 GOIS. Go back. And though we radiated axilla, lower axilla was radiated, and patient is alive 5 years. Next slide. I'm thankful to Kashish and the team that they have permitted me for 10 minutes to present a very interesting case. So we have a 25-year-old young girl, unmarried, regular menstruation, no family history, lump in the breast, and she noticed 2 lumps on right breast. One was a 4 centimeter to 3 centimeter, other was on the lateral quadrant. So one was a middle quadrant and one was a lateral quadrant. And it was a 2.5 centimeter. Radiologically, the nodes looked positive, but my clinical impression was probably not. Next slide. Obviously, routine investigation, and then the BRCA mutation was sent for. Now, she was only BRCA1 positive. So I will ask the question later on to Nilesh or Nitesh, why only BRCA1 will have any effect on further treatment. But before that, I'll complete the case. Next slide. MRI did show that 2 lesions, one is at 2 o'clock, one at 4 o'clock. And there were another lesion at superior lateral quadrant associated with duct dilation. And so that's what the finding. Next slide. And you can see the mammogram, you can see the 2 lesions. One was the smaller one and one was in the medial quadrant was the bigger one. The left breast was normal. Next slide. And you can see the biopsy, 2 cut, triple negative, both the breasts. In one case, the CRB2 was 2 plus fish was negative. That was the tumor at 3 o'clock, which was slightly bigger tumor. And the other tumor, again, ERPR negative. The CRBT was negative. And BRCA1 was only positive, as I mentioned. Next slide. So what do we do with these patients? My surgical colleagues, obviously with the patient of triple negative, BRCA1 positive, would you like to operate, Dr. Dev?
No, Dr. Sanjay, I think we subject these patients to neoadjuvant because our surgical patient also take time. She needs to be counseled. She's not a very good candidate for breast conservation. Whether she's willing for a mastectomy with reconstruction or a contralateral risk reduction, I will explain all these issues. Send for neoadjuvant chemotherapy. And we also need to consider fertility preservation issues in these patients. She's 25. So these are the 2 issues.
Sorry, thanks. Nilesh, quickly.
So she has one side at complete triple negative and the other side she has disease that is HER2 positive also.
No, but it was fish negative. It was a fish negative.
It was fish negative, okay.
Yeah, so it's a triple negative.
So I have the option of either using AC followed by weekly paclitaxel as a neoadjuvant setting. I also have.
Why not? She's a high risk candidate cargo in this.
So I'm coming to that, sir. So she is a good candidate for using a taxane and carboplatin, or a taxane and carboplatin along with a PARP inhibitor. So these are 3 options that can be considered based on a case-to-case scenario from the financial aspect also.
Okay. Nitesh, anything different?
So I think that Dr. Dio was absolutely right. I mean, it depends on what patient wants to do, but I would
No, she's a young lady. She wants to conserve.
So then I would do AC followed by Pacli Carbo and proceed with surgery then.
And what about, as Nilesh was saying, PARP inhibitor, though you have initial.
So very interesting. I think I'm very interesting. I'm not saying no. I'm just waiting for more mature data to appear to adopt it. But I think that will be the next line of things we'll be doing in a few years' time.
Next slide, please. Okay, so she received EC dose times weekly Pacli, and carbo was not given good response. Only minimal residual disease on medial quadrant tumor. The outer quadrant disappeared. Next slide. And the PET scan showed medial quadrant disease only, no other disease. Good response. Next slide. I have the picture now. Surgeons, Dr. Dev.
Yes.
What kind of surgery now? She is only a very tiny remote medial quadrant tumor. The opposite breast is normal. As you rightly mentioned, you have to counsel the patient because the BRCA1 positive, only BRCA2 was negative. So options are there, conservative surgery, but two-side tumors, skin sparing mastectomy with reconstruction, role of sentinel node biopsy, and even discussion about the opposite breast. So she is 25, unmarried girl, and what will be the option and when will you do that and how to go about that. Sorry, when go.
Yeah, if she's preoperatively, she's willing for risk reduction or she's not keen for the breast conservation because MRI has shown 2 lesions with a periductal extension towards the nipple and areola complex. So she's definitely at a higher risk of loco-regional recurrence, even if you do breast conservation. But it is not absolute contraindication. Breast conservation is not absolute contraindication in multifocal tumors. If you have 2 tumors which can be excised margin negative, even in BRCA, breast conservation is not a contraindication. Even in TNBC, breast conservation is not a contraindication. But they are at a higher risk of local recurrence. So if the preoperative the patient willing for mastectomy, I will go for skin sparing mastectomy with reconstruction.
Now one more, Vijay, this young lady is there. Now, she said, no, I don't want to have risk reduction surgery at this stage. I'm not married yet. I have still life to go. I'm just a BRCA positive. My chances of coming back, disease coming back, is not as high as both BRCA1, BRCA2 positive, or BRCA2 positive. The ovaries are normal and the sonography. So would you consider something different in this case apart from handling the right breast? Would you leave the left breast for observation or you try to guide her for some treatment?
Yes.
Vijay Anand Reddy.
Sorry, I lost the time.
No, as I said, patient has lump on one side, treatment on one side, no other disease on the left side. She's 25, unmarried girl. She wants to have life.
Right.
How many of would you like to treat the left breast at this stage with only BRCA1 positive and not BRCA2?
You mean that she require radiation or not?
No. I mean, any kind of treatment that you do for next, either you go for observation, you consider for a treatment for the opposite breast at this stage.
No, I would just keep a follow-up.
Surveillance.
The same?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you because she's young and unmarried. The contralateral breast can be kept under surveillance.
Yeah.
Kaustav?
Yes, sir. Surveillance.
Nitesh? Dr. Rohde?
They're muted. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for unmuting me. So I was saying that BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutation would be rarely seen in the same patient. We would expect only one of those two, and BRCA1, as you know, has higher penetration. So 40 to 50% patients will have a recurrence in the other breast. So I think these facts have to be known to the patient that both strategies are equally good.
No, she was explained everything. No, she was very clear that at this stage she wants to have a normal life, minimum 1 child. So how long can you wait and what would be the right age to treat her opposite side if she remains like that? Or is it, we can just
I would follow up with the MRI continuously.
And treat her when she recurs on the other.
Yeah, or not at all after 10 years.
Okay, next slide please. So we did the right skin sparing mastectomy. We did save the nipple because we did the undersurface of the nipple biopsy sent was frozen negative. So we saved the nipple in this girl, and the clearance and the reconstruction was done with an LD flap with the plan of radiation therapy. Now, what kind of radiation therapy would we give Costa or Vijay, who can take over? The young girl who should not have problem in future with the entire tumor removed. Next slide, please. You can see this is the histology. She had margin-free tumor and T1 and X node were negative, and the androgen was 20%. Next slide. On lateral tumor again, she had Ki6727, all triple negative, margins free. Next slide. So, as I said, opposite breast, either observation, we did observation. Now, role of radiation therapy after skin sparing mastectomy, LD flap. Dr. Talpatra and Dr. Abhijan and their please opinion. And we have, since we are margin free, you need to radiate after a mastectomy in this case?
Yeah, it's only multicentricity that does not indicate any radiation. Margins are negative, total mastectomy done, all the nodes are negative.
Yes.
So I would see no role for radiation.
Perfect. What Costa?
Second it, sir. Is absolutely right.
Okay, perfect. So, Dherashil, in this case, would you like to put expander at this stage in case, because the breast, when they put the LD flap, the breast was not very symmetrical. So we put the LD flap initially for her psychological sake. Thought, okay, we'll put an LD. Would you put an expander in this case, or do a microvascular reconstruction for enhancement of the breast more of the breast volume equal to the opposite side?
Can I have a slide, please? The last slide. Ashish?
So I'll just share your slide, sir.
Yeah. The last slide, I think.
This one, sir?
Next. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So now here you can see that you can do a skin sparing mastectomy. Here in this patient, we have taken out the nipple area complex because it's something which is similar to what Sanjay had. I would not be very comfortable in keeping the nipple areola and then do a LD flap in an implant. These are two other patients where a surgery had been done. Now the question is whether we should put an expander. This is the study from MD Anderson where they are doing immediate delayed expanders. They put an expander, they give radiation, and then they expand it, and then they put an implant. A lot of our patients are not very keen on multiple surgeries. So in these patients, if I am not going to put an implant, then I would do a microvascular tram flap, which would do as good. Overcorrect it a little so that it reduces and gives same. Now this lady had nearly the same symmetry. Again, this is with an LD with an implant. Again, this is another lady with LD and implant. This is that same lady. So I think it works well. As I said, if you think there's a doubt whether you're going to give radiotherapy or not, then you can put an expander, or better still, use a microvascular DIF flap, not a tram, DIF flap.
Dr. Dev.
Yes, sir.
Last word on this case. Dr. SVS Dev, last word on this case.
Yeah, for this patient, I think skin sparing with implant reconstruction is a good option. She is young. I don't want to spoil her abdominal muscles or a tram flap or a DIGP here. And she's not a candidate for radiotherapy, so that if you put implant, we are safe enough. The contralateral I'll keep under survival.
Is there anything different that we do her than other case for a follow-up? Because she's very paranoid. She keeps coming from Dubai every 1 month to show it to us. And I said, don't worry, she's get follow-up there. And but I know time is the best healer, but anything different that we do normal follow-ups, Dr. Dev, than what you do at your own pace for a normal person?
Yeah, absolutely. You see, this the psychological stress needs to be addressed young patients. So a lot of counseling goes into these patients. And as far as the image envelope is concerned, again, mammograms may not be very accurate, especially at the age of 25. So we alternate with mammography and MRI, alternate follow-up imaging, and clinical assessment is the best on side. And since she has an implant on one side, the other side may be dense, so we go for MRI follow-up in alternative and a good amount of counseling. And she also needs to be counseled and examined and maybe seen for an ovarian malignancy at a later stage. Once she completes her family, then we can think of a risk-reducing oophorectomy after the age of 30 or 30. So abdominal imaging, MRI should be there as part of the follow-up, and a good counseling. So these three are important.
Thank you very much. Next slide, please.
So I'll just share your slides. So just give me a minute.
Okay, now see, I think we have come to the end of all the questions. Do I have time for questions, Mr. Kashish or Rahul?
So we can go.
Can I have some questions if time permits?
Sure, sir. So should I unmute the audience?
Yes, you do that,
Yeah.
please.
Dr. Sashi Muli, I am unmuting you. You'll have to unmute yourself. Yeah, please go ahead.
You can, I think, take my slides off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Shashi, please speak. Sashi.
Is it mandatory to get a repeat PET scan after the?
Sashi, speak loudly.
Hello.
Sashi is in Lucknow now with being a breast MCH. Am I right, Sashi?
Yes, sir. Breast and endocrine.
Right. Welcome.
Yes,
Ask your question.
sir, is it mandatory to get a repeat PET scan after initial metastatic workup? And what will be the chances of distant metastasis in the setting of partial response of the primary tumor?
Very good question. Dr. Dev, please. Or anybody who can take, Dr. Dev, you can take this question.
Yeah, it's the response assessment you can do if it's only surgical implications. But if you're doing a PET scan, if clinically they are responding, it's not going to change your management. Local imaging is very important if you're planning to see whether if you're planning breast conservation, then PET is not a good modality. It has to be either a mammogram or a MRI for local decision making. PET will help you if you're looking for any progressive disease, then only PET will have a value. Clinically progressive disease. I hope I have answered your question.
Yeah, I think that's what we do it for, to see the assessment, especially for example, internal memory node as in the first case or in the second case, to see whether it was a dense breast to really the tumor has disappeared or not. Because if it had not disappeared, the line of treatment would have changed and we had to do a mastectomy rather than a breast conservation. Yes, anybody else? Next question.
Sir, would you like to recheck the Ki67 value before labeling it as a luminal A? Because we are not giving her a neoadjuvant chemotherapy in CT4 patients. Because it is very subjective.
Anybody? Dr. Adhinan Reddy? Anybody?
Nitish. Nitish can take it.
Sir, sorry, I missed that question.
Come back with your question again.
I missed that question.
Sir, actually, before labeling a patient as luminal A, the Ki67 values as it is very subjective.
No, so I think you're talking about correlation of Ki67 to luminal A, because you know luminal A and B and basal type are not really, they are a molecular subtype. And there has been a lot of studies. Your three problems are A, Ki67, is it validated and standardized at your center? A very big problem. The second problem is that there are different cutoffs all across the world. And the third is that you have seen too many clinical discrepancies when we do that. Having said that, I think if you take a cutoff as less than 10 and more than 10, which is a very judicious cutoff, I think you may get away with saying PR high, please use PR high as a value there, and a KR less than 10 in an old lady, no family history, you could say this is luminal A, but please watch carefully because you may get wrong.
And one more question in the last case.
Anybody else? You can ask that question later. Anybody else? Other than Sachi want to ask question?
So Dr. Madan, I'm trying to unmute you. You can ask your question. So Dr. Madan, are you here? So anyway, so I'll just read Dr. Madan's question. Just for curiosity, is PARP inhibitors used extensively in India as shown in the slides?
Nilesh, question to you.
Nilesh sir, you'll have to unmute yourself. Okay.
No, you're still muted, Nilesh.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Nilesh, he's asking PARP inhibitors.
So, in the metastatic setting, in patients who are BRCA positive, who have HRD positive, or in CA ovary, there is some use of PARP inhibitors. But otherwise, no. In clinical practice, the fact that we have only one which is available right now, and that also which is prohibitively expensive, there is very limited use, at least in my practice. Nitesh, would you like to say something?
No, it's very tough. I mean, all in all, we have used about 10 patients, all ovarian, and maybe one breast. So, no, very rare use.
Very rare use, yeah. So, for some time, talazoparib was available as a compassionate use in ovary. and that's where even I have used that. But in breast, I have practically not used in any patient.
Yeah, so that's one or two patients. I mean, I have a talent who's done very well with a breast with a brain met. But
Correct.
I think you can't really say that we have experience of these drugs.
Hardly any, hardly any.
Any other questions? Next
So
question.
we have a question from Dr. Rajesh Singh.
Yes,
Sir, I've
Rajesh, go ahead.
unmuted your mic. Rajesh
Hello.
sir, can you hear us? Yeah.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Good evening, sir. Excellent discussion. I wanted to know, with the advent of these next generation sequencing,
No,
and
you are not audible, Rajesh. So speak slowly.
with the advent of NGS testing, how is it going to affect our surgical decision making or planning in future? It is going to affect the chemotherapy regimens and sequencing. Is it going to affect our surgical planning or sequencing of surgery?
Can I take that, please?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't think NGS will impact your surgical staging at all. If you look at the entire NGS data, the least effective tumor type is actually breast, A. And B, the curative setting, I think NGS has a long way to come. And so I don't think you need to worry about it. You should not even think about NGS in a breast cancer in a curative setting, neoadjuvant or adjuvant, and it's not going to change therapy. It will be statistically driven.
Thank you, sir.
Next question, Vani.
Dr. Sanjeeva, I've unmuted your mic. Please go ahead. Dr. Sanjeeva? So I'll just read Dr. Sanjeeva's question. When do you do androgen receptor testing and anti-androgen therapy?
Anybody wants to take it?
So in a curative setting, I would not actually use it. I think it is the metastatic setting in a triple negative, whose AR positive, and my personal take on this is who have a slow growing triple negative metastatic setting is where you need to consider it.
I would like to chip in here that we are doing an androgen receptor study for prognostication in the patients who are not able to probably get into our molecular typing. At the moment, we are embarked upon a study, a correlation of AR with HER2 positivity and negativity vis-a-vis in terms of a triple negative patient as well as an ER/PR positive patients, whether they are aggressive or non-aggressive. So there is some data coming up which is showing that yes, androgen may be an indicator or early indicator for us to treat this patient aggressively, or maybe you can see that prognostically they may be better. But at the moment it's too premature. Maybe in another year or two, we will come back to the study. But we are now gathered enough data for almost more than 3 years, and we have some follow-up available. So when it comes back, we'll definitely present. Any other comment, Dr. Vijayanand Reddy, on this aspect?
So Dr. Vijay is not there currently.
Okay, fine. Nilesh, on this, any question or answer on this androgen, please?
No, I think, I just thought in the last patient which we discussed, the fourth case, the young lady with bilateral tumors who has not had a complete pathological response, there could have been a case of giving post-surgical treatment for 6 months with adjuvant capecitabine in that setting.
Okay. So androgen will be for that?
I'm sorry?
Will androgen low will be for that?
No, I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear you.
No. What the question was, why should you do an androgen receptor study if you are not going to use it? As I said, I am planning to do a prognostic markers for future. Nidesh said that in very few percentage of cases you can use it. You said you will use it in the last case.
No, I didn't. I'm sorry. I didn't mean about androgen receptor and its usage in the last case. I was talking about something that we left out was adjuvant capecitabine in that patient. With regards to your question about AR receptor positivity in triple negative breast cancer, there is some role of using bicalutamide, enzalutamide, and drugs like that in the metastatic setting. But again, these are not first-line drugs. So they're typically used once you've exhausted most other options. The response rates are not very high, but they are an option in these patients.
Any other questions? I think we are running out of time.
So we're running out of time. So we have been prompted also. So we'll take one last question from Dr. Bhargav. Dr. Bhargav, please go ahead.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, please.
Yes, you are. Finish it.
Sir, this is indeed an excellent discussion. I just have a question that when we are evaluating a patient with locally advanced breast carcinoma, and when we do a PET CT scan, we find that there is a single mediastinal lymph node which is PET positive. So the approach, a directed approach should be according to LABC or definitely should be MBC?
Dr. Dev is around. Dr. HV says Dev, they're gone.
So Dr. Dev is not there, sir.
No, I would treat this patient as a locally advanced breast cancer. As I said, it becomes an N3B disease rather than an N2B disease. So, and that is the reason if it is a hormone negative patient or a HER2 positive patient, especially considering the biology, I would do a scan and that node I would treat it as it is in a routine practice. But theoretically, you may say that we can do a biopsy of it and that proceed, but practically we don't do that. And we treat these patients as it is. Probably these cases anyway are getting treated with neoadjuvant chemotherapy. And that is one of the reasons I do a PET scan to see if it resolves. And it might resolve completely. And that could be, I would say, a surrogate marker to suggest that, yes, it was a case that it was metastasis in the past.
Thank you very much, sir.
So I think with this, I thank all my panelists, Kaustav, Dr. Vijayanand Reddy, Dherashil, Nitesh, Nilesh, and of course the Kaustav Talpatra. And it was really wonderful having all. And thank you very much, Manjuri and team, and Kashish and team for an excellent arrangement and lovely telecast for this webinar. I am really grateful, and thank to all the participants to attend this and for the questions that they asked. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Can I request Mr. Vishwanathan? I think Dr. Dherashil wants to add something. So
Yes, do you want to add something? No, he said no.
Okay. Mr. I would like to request Mr. Vishwanathan to give the vote of thanks. Mr. Vishwanathan, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. Thanks, Kashish. On behalf of Oncostem, this is Vishwanathan, thanking all of you for having taken time out and attending today's virtual scientific meeting. In spite of a relaxed lockdown and OPD commitments, we had over 100 doctors attending the webinar today. These webinars are earnest attempt to bring to you interesting topics and facilitate learning. Today was another very exciting session. Thank you, Dr. Sharma, for all the interesting cases and moderating the discussion so well. And thank you to all the panelists, to Dr. Deo, Dr. Sawant, Dr. Reddy, Dr. Talpatra, Dr. Rotegi, and Dr. Lokeshwar. We couldn't unfortunately have Dr. Hossein Ahmed today. It was indeed a treat listening to all of you. Hope you all enjoyed this session as much as we did bringing this to you. Thank you once again, and good night.
Good night. Thank you.